So welcome back, everybody. This is episode 8 of The Power of You. How are you today, Bill?
I'm great. It's great to see you.
Yes, great to see you. Unfortunately, not in person this time, but love to record these episodes all the same, regardless if we're in the same country or not. Um, anyway, so we're back here. Another month has passed, and here we are, ready to talk on our next subject. This time, the topic that I wanted to bring up today actually was around resistance, and this has been kind of prevalent for me, like over the last few weeks, and in the process of growth, um, we as humans, often perhaps resist, you know, the growth opportunities or resist taking the steps that we need to take to grow because it's actually like very uncomfortable, and it's almost we have to look within ourselves, and that process isn't always easy to do, right? I wanted to start today by talking about resistance, and resistance to change, and how that is kind of hardwired into us. Maybe to start, what's your take on resistance and why we tend to default to that position?
Well, there's a few angles. One of them is we have a comfort zone, and anything that moves us out of the comfort zone is to that part of us. Why do I need that? Uh, Do I have to? Give me a compelling reason. Why would I want to do that? But that's exacerbated by the accelerators of information overload of the culture that we take for granted that life is like this. But go back 1,000 years or even 500 years, life was nothing like this in terms of the cognitive load. We are already stretched beyond our mental capacity to just cope with the everyday events, all the complexity of what happens every day. So we try to minimize that by emergency oversimplification procedure, EOP, which is essentially a robotic reaction that we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. If I hear this question, I give this answer. I always give that answer without realizing how boring that is and how uncreative it is. And therefore, there's no growth and there's no learning. There's certainly no flow state or inspiration when you're locked in that defensive coping mode of trying not to have to think, as opposed to embracing creative thinking. It's fun. Part of the solution, I think, is first of all knowing that this is the cause, and therefore, when you find that you're resisting, to become more patient. Unless you're in a speeding car heading toward a brick wall, if you have the luxury of being patient, try it. It's fun. Being patient is almost like taking a vacation. You can breathe deeply. Somehow we can't breathe deeply because we're too busy. We're moving too fast, and that takes time to breathe deeply. So part of it is the incessant time pressure that we impose on ourselves habitually. Um, that's my initial take on it.
Yeah, it is, as you say, EOP, so where we're just doing things from a robotic standpoint, and then anything that perhaps interrupts that, we kind of automatically reject it without necessarily realizing. And I was talking about this actually just earlier this week, and I explained it's almost sometimes like somebody's holding a torch, like up to a part of you that needs to like grow or like evolve. And it's almost like we find that light or that heat from the torch, like so uncomfortable. Like our automatic reaction is like, oh, get that away from me. Like I don't want to look there. Like I just don't want to look there. And I think, I notice myself, like even now, and I'm someone that like advocates for growth, is like somebody that actively seeks it, and still can feel that discomfort, right? When my body is kind of saying, oh, you don't want to do that, or you don't want to be wrong, or whatever it's telling you. I think though the difference is that I can recognize that, and I think being able to recognize that you are having that reaction, it's like, even if you're having the reaction still, it's like at least you're able to recognize it. Whereas probably, sometimes there are people around you that are looking to support you, or trying to maybe like advise you or give you some information, and a lot of the time, like, we kind of close off because we almost don't want to hear it, because that torch, it's like it's too hot. Like we don't want that heat on us. So I think being able to, even if you can still feel the discomfort and feel the heat, it's about learning to almost sit with that, and once you do, and you process that emotion or feeling, if you like, it doesn't feel as bad as it did the first time.
That's observer state. When you can create that distance between your own feeling and how you express it externally. So initially, you could be an actor or an actress and not let other people see your discomfort, your resistance. Um, but then the next stage of that, the real observer state, is not only don't you exhibit it, but you don't even identify with it. You don't own it. You don't take ownership of it. It's like, okay, I'm feeling like I wish I wasn't in this conversation right now. I wish I was someplace else, but I am here and I have to deal with it. And more importantly, am I in control of myself? Do I want to be in control of myself? Do I want to not be in control of myself? I want to be in control of myself. So why do I have this feeling? Maybe I should look at it as if I have several metaphors. One is an enemy agent is trying to take over my mind and is trying to make me less effective. So I have to put up a mental block. So the mental block is, I don't know where that's coming from, and it's not coming from me. It may be coming from an old copy of me that's laying around in my database. Let's purge it out. I don't want it. I don't want to have to feel resistance to things. I don't want to feel discomfort. And it often happens to me, given that I take on so much work, that I'm at a stage where I'm trying to concentrate on something to get it done. And somebody comes in and needs something right now. And I don't have a positive feeling about that situation, but it's happening, which means the universe let it happen. And the universe is my boss. I'm here representing the universe. So anyone who interrupts me is God. And I have to act on that, not just remember it as an intellectual concept, but it's something. So, okay, I'm not going to get this done right now. I'm going to turn and deal with this new situation. So that's a couple of my metaphors. Metaphors are part of the way our brain works and our mind works. And sometimes they're part of the problem, they're part of EOP. They keep us in EOP if they're the wrong metaphors for the situation. But if you find the right metaphor for the situation, it seems your body gets metaphors. It permeates your cells of your body. There's not much intelligence in each individual cell or in the body itself, but there's enough intelligence and consciousness to react to a simple metaphor because they remember, oh yeah, that's like that. Oh, I understand now. So I find that I can be more in control of myself by remembering the metaphors that work in certain types of situations. Of course, I wrote the book My Magic. It's all about metaphors.
As soon as you started talking about metaphors there, you probably saw me smiling because in coaching, we work in metaphors like all the time because it's so powerful, right? And I think it really helps people to kind of place, like, not just where they are, but how they're feeling. Like some people can say, I'm on a road and I'm driving the car and I'm at a junction and, I could go left or I could go right and, or climbing a mountain or whatever the metaphor is. It does just conjure up like such an image that is lasting. And you said, you use this metaphor all the time. It's like I've got a boss, and that's how you remember it, and you bring that up every single time you feel something. And I think that the use of metaphors is so powerful. So even if, I was talking about a torch, right, and holding a torch like to you, and for me, I don't know where that came from, but it, in my mind now, every time I feel some, resistance within my body or like discomfort, I remind myself someone's just shining a torch on me. It's not them. It's not like, that's how I remember it. So I guess for anyone listening, you've got a boss that you're needing to listen to, and I've got a torch that's shining in different areas. So I think, I guess for anybody that's listening, probably invite you to use the metaphor that works best for you to understand when you're feeling these things. And because if you understand when you're feeling it, I think like recognizing and self-awareness always has to be the first step to making any change, right?
I think that the whole subject we always talk about is really about self-awareness, knowing that um, you will always be having automatic reactions, and some of them might even be good automatic reactions. But you have to be above all of that. You can't just be immersed in it to the degree that you're a repetitive, habitual robot, always doing the same thing. You have to be free to make changes and to accept change that's happening from outside that you swept along by, that you have really no choice. It's happening. You have to deal with it. And you have to, the best way to deal with anything is not by retreating from it, but by stepping into it, embracing it, accepting that it's happening. Accept what is my first rule. It's happening. It's so that's the given. Now, what would be the most fun way to respond to that? The most productive way, the most beneficial way, the nicest, kindest way? What would be the best? What do I want to do today? How do I want to react to it? Not by resisting it, because it's happening. You can't undo what's happening. You can try, but it's not a very good strategy. It's not successful. It's much better to go with the flow and then try to steer it in the most positive direction. And, we come into situations with a kind of a wall or armor, defensive posture, that we're self-protective. Um, we've got our own agenda, and anything that isn't part of our agenda at the moment is not necessarily welcome. And, depending on the situation, you might be internally resistant and you might already be trying to act nice. And if you're aware of what's going on and how you're doing it, you're going to be doing it better, whether it's just covering up or actually changing. And change is difficult. First of all, there's all the habit that all the times you repeat things. You know, if you've done something 1,000 times, your whole system has inertia, momentum in that direction. Overcoming that, we all know how hard it is to break bad habits. You know, practically everyone I know is either trying to break a smoking or a drinking or a drug or a overeating or whatever habits, and it's extremely difficult. The only way to do that is by baby steps and observing that you actually can do the baby steps. Because there's a part of you that doesn't even believe you can do baby steps. But if you do baby steps, then that part, after a little bit of demonstration, will go along with change because they see that, oh, it can be done. You can stick to resolutions as long as they're modest, small steps.
Yeah, the small steps is what leads to the big incremental changes. And, you know, I think we're all on our own growth journeys, and growth is happening through many different ways. You know, for some, it's like raising a family and bringing up kids, like that's growing individuals in that way. Or you could be building a business and that's growing you. Or, you know, perhaps you're in a career and you've decided to shift and do something completely different. We're all on our own growth journeys. We're all on our own growth journeys, but I think it is really that it kind of links with the concept we were talking about last time when we were talking about being bold. It's that concept of, we talked of a locker room, if you remember. We talked of, you know, maybe you're not the best footballer, right, and but you've managed to get into this room of really superb athletes, and even the act of being in that room with all those athletes that you know are more experienced than you, even that act of just being there is bold. And, you know, you might aspire to be, you know, I mean, whatever your goals are, you might aspire to be like these athletes, or, you know, like these parents, that whatever it is, being in the room and putting yourself in an uncomfortable position, that in itself is a step. And so these small steps, and then when you're around people that maybe have, you know, achieved what you want to achieve, or you aspire or inspire you, rather than looking at to them as almost a source of like, it's almost triggering. It's quite triggering because it, you know, everything inside you is perhaps going, oh my God, this is really uncomfortable. This is new. I don't know how they can act and show up like that. But I think if you are, or we are all able to kind of lean in and almost look to others as like a source of inspiration, that rather than a source of threat, because there's they've not got there by accident, right? So it is learning from others and being curious to learn from others, rather. So embrace the discomfort, get yourself in the spaces with people that have, I guess, are on similar growth journeys than you, and then lean in with curiosity rather than run away with, you know, discomfort and fear.
Well, the fear of failure holds us back. And if we go into a situation where we know we're going to not be perfect, that's uncomfortable. But we can depend on human beings. If we're authentic in the situation and respectful and humble and willing to learn and not trying to puff ourselves up or pretend to be more capable than we are in a particular room, a particular field, or um, people will help us. That's because human beings are innately good. I know that that is widely contended nowadays, and it's a very cynical culture. And you know, there's a certain tough-mindedness and a a kind of idolization of toughness. If you look at all of the movies, all of the television shows, people who get elected in elections, the people who may not really be tough inside, but they project toughness. That's toughness is a big thing nowadays. And so my suggestion is when you're in a situation that you feel uncomfortable in, tell yourself, bring it on, because that's tough, right? So you have this now this cultural imperative to be tough. So that's the way you can be tough. That's the way you can really be tough, is to face up to life. Embrace whatever the situation is you're in. But, don't try to fake being more than you are at that moment. Be totally humble and respectful.
Yeah, rather it's not necessarily bring it on to others, it's bring it on to yourself, right?
Yourself, right.
It's telling yourself, like, come on. I think of me, and I pep talk myself all the time. I'm like, right, come on, Natalie, today you've got this. And again, we're in control of that voice in our mind. And I know that for a lot of people, that voice can feel very, very negative, but you and I know after time working, continued small steps, that voice, you can shift it to be a positive voice, and it can be your biggest supporter. And I know for me, if I didn't have that voice in my head saying, go get this, you've got this, you're not going to be led anywhere you're not meant to be, like, you're here for a reason. And I think you said something similar before. It's like, it is it's meant to be, or whatever the statement was you shared. It's There is a reason that we are finding ourselves in certain situations, certain rooms, certain feelings of discomfort. There is a reason why that torch is being shone on you, or there is a reason why you've got this boss telling you to go focus on this area, or look in a cupboard perhaps that you don't want to look in. There is a reason. And I think underpinning everything, I think for you and I, and I don't obviously want to speak for you, it's just a deep faith. It's like a deep faith that everything is unfolding as it's meant to. So even when you feel the resistance, you still know that it's for your highest and best, even if it feels uncomfortable.
Everything happens for a reason, and the universe is conscious and benevolent. It isn't all accident, and matter is not the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is consciousness. And your own consciousness is your own strongest gift, your own strongest weapon, your own strongest healing tool. And you described it so well. There's this hidden switch where you can take this cranky, complaining voice that's always picking on you, picking on yourself, and also judging and being critical of other people and of life in general. That is part of the culture. You can shift that voice using that hidden switch to say, this is happening for a reason, and there's going to be a happy ending. And what I have to do now is, in my case, man up to the situation. You would have to woman up to the situation. It's not, I don't know why they don't use that term, but so be it.
Yeah, I think for us it might be. I think when you get to a certain place in your mind where you are speaking to yourself positively, and it it's almost the default now for me is that this voice is positive, that it's telling me that I've got this, that I can do it. Um, as you said, bring it on. Like, that is the inner narrative inside my mind. Not saying that I don't have days or whatever that I have certain thoughts, but the overriding voice is a positive one. And I think for me now, it's quite it's quite easy to forget that it wasn't always like that, and that the voice wasn't always positive, and it wasn't always so strong, and it wasn't so easy to hear. So I think, when you talked about flipping the switch, just almost anticipating what a listener might want to ask here is how do you flip the switch if if the room's currently dark and you can't see where the socket is? How does one find the switch before flipping it?
Well, you have to start from open-mindedness. You have to say, okay, turbulent inner feelings, basically, I don't feel good. I wish I wasn't here in this situation. Um, the first thing is to realize that you actually have control over that. That's a part of you that's taken over, but you can take it over and you can wrestle it. The biblical tale of wrestling with the angel. That's a metaphor for what we're talking about here, is that your better half, your better side is being suppressed. In the whole world, most people are in that condition right now. I mean, that's why the institutions are breaking, and we're moving in some dangerous directions. It's because of us individuals are stuck, locked into this negative downward spiral. The only way to make the world a better place is for us to heal ourselves one by one, individually. That's our first job. It's either that or, we're going to wind up in slave labor camps eventually, in the direction that the world is going. We're all going to be under totalitarian rule. We won't have any freedoms, any rights, and we'll like it a lot less than now, and we'll have much less ability to change it externally. Right now, we still have, if we have, as you've already learned and gained as a permanent fixture, a positive attitude. Anyone with a positive attitude has kind of like a magical cape on. There's a halo that's emanating that draws people who want to help you and want to learn from you, and just drawn by feels good to be around somebody who's in a positive mood. Maybe some of it will rub off on me, is the subconscious thought. So there's definitely a reason to want to find the hidden switch. And because it's consciousness, you have to do it with your consciousness. You have to feel around inside for the hidden switch. You have to get past those bad feelings in your mind. And, I don't know if you've ever noticed this. I think many people have noticed it, that when they have really bad pain, whether it's a toothache or a headache or whatever, if they focus in a certain way on the pain to try to define what it actually is, it doesn't hurt as much. Somehow the pain has less sting to it. If you're focusing on trying to figure out, well, what is that pain? What is it actually? And not using words, but feeling around. What is it? Is it burning? Is it stinging? Is it sharp? Is it soft? So that's the same thing with mental pain. If it's not a physical pain, but a mental pain, you use that same approach of investigating it internally with your mind. There are tools in your mind that you're not using yet. And there's always going to be more tools in there that to be discovered. Eventually, potentially, you could have, by act of will, out-of-body experiences. That seems, very woo-woo and ridiculous, but it's not. We have these tools in us. We are part of consciousness. The illusion of matter is very compelling, but it's mostly, atoms are mostly empty space. So we think things are hard and tactile, but that's all part of the tactilovision video game that God has created. Or if you don't like the word God, the universe is that, and the universe is us, and we're all one thing. But right now we're in a part of the universe where we're in little chunks, and we consider ourselves little selves, but it's really just one of us temporarily acting as this self because it's fun, an art form. It's a learning experience. It's the best possible learning experience. It's got drama and it's got comedy. Now, when you're aware of the whole universe, when you're omnipotent and omniscient, you could be enjoying it, but you can't really get scared by it. You can't really get worried by it. You can't really get concerned about achieving something because it's all, you're in control of the whole thing. There's no resistance. Without some resistance, there's no game. So this is also like a sport, the universal consciousness. This is the sport. You can get hurt in football and you can get hurt in life. But at the end of the game, you can't really be destroyed. You can change bodies. When you die, you get another body. And you may wind up at a higher level of existence if you've learned enough. But if your mind is closed to all of those possibilities, it's going to be hard for cynical people to find the hidden switch inside because they are ruling out those possibilities, spiritual possibilities, because of peer pressure and mind control and brainwashing. And that's what we're all getting from the day we're born. We're getting constant brainwashing. Now, it's not badly intended brainwashing. Everybody's trying to teach us things. Sometimes they teach us to be distrustful of people of color or, some other thing they teach us, which I think is for our own good. But they're teaching us things that aren't scientifically proven and in fact are wrong in the real world. But they're not talking about the real world. They're talking about their own brainwashing. They're passing along the brainwashing.
Yeah, I think that's it. We don't always realize the parts of, I mean, we're all conditioned to some extent because, when we've talked about this in the past, but when we come into this world as like babies, like the programming hasn't begun yet, but like it starts to happen, and children will look at things with the childlike curiosity, the wonderment, just the pure joy, like animals as well. They talk about, if you want to look for like a joyous, happy like example, look at animals. Their dogs are always pleased to see you whenever you like come back. They don't hold grudges and all this kind of stuff. So. But you talked there about the quite a few things, but the video game piece, and you're saying resistance is actually part of the game, right? Because without any resistance, then how do you up the levels? So I think a useful reframe, we start in this talking about resistance. So actually, if you feel that, you are entering a new level of the game. So if you feel that and know that, and we talked a bit about metaphors, if you feel that and know that, the metaphor that might help you actually enjoy the resistance is that, well, this is telling me I'm going to enter the next level, which should be an exciting thing, right? Like we all want to get to the next level and continue to grow. So feeling that resistance rather than, yes, okay, it's still uncomfortable, but knowing that there is another level being unlocked, that should actually kind of be exciting. It should be exciting for you because if you unlock it, you're going to get new powers, right? When you get to the next level. So I think that reframe and that metaphor, when you feel resistance, knowing that you're up leveling, is actually quite a powerful one.
Beautiful. Love that.
Yeah. And you talked also, a bit about this mind control too. And I think this is something that we all, I mean, I don't know how aware everybody is that their mind is controlled. I think there is a lot more awareness now and a lot more skepticism now of, news outlets, things on social media. People are kind of, I would say, starting to discern a little bit more in terms of, is that really true? And, like questioning, which, I mean, I've noticed a bit of a shift in that. With, like, I think after the pandemic, people are questioning a little bit more. There's no science to back that up. That's just my experience. But I think with mind control, I think questioning is the first step. It's just been like, well, why? Like, who said? Like, why does it have to be that way? And I think that's a really positive first step. But I don't believe we all know the extent into which our mind is controlled, because it can be quite difficult to understand, okay, what part of me is the conditioning and what part of me is me, right? And I think the questioning piece and being discerning is definitely the first step. But I guess for a lot of people, myself included, there's certain parts of you that you're, perhaps you're like, is that actually me? And I think being inquisitive and inquiring in that is probably a first step to understanding the mind control. But you will be able to share more on your take on mind control.
It requires a degree of positivity and a degree of open-mindedness. It's because it's going to take time to sort out who's the real me. What does the me that was born want out of life? And so you need some time alone to do that. I recommend 20 minutes a day of alone space where you have a notepad or whatever you want, computer, tablet, anything you like to jot notes into. I use paper and myself. And you might find yourself sketching or drawing a mind map. You just shouldn't be afraid to put stuff down on paper, because what comes out automatically will start to give you a clue as to the things. Initially, you'll find the things that you really don't care so much about, that you've been knocking yourself out to get. That some of them, when you have a moment to reflect on it, you don't care. You don't really need that. So it starts with some degree of stripping away things that you realize, I've been allocating a great deal of time, effort, and especially emotional attachment to certain outcomes that, when I reflect on it deeply enough, they're not such high priorities. So then what is? What would I really like to be doing? And then you use your imagination to do constructive daydreaming, where you think about, what would it be like in my favorite outcome, my future, the movie of my life. Where does it go from here? What would I like to see? What would my real passion work be? What would I leave behind that would be a contribution? What would other people get pleasure out of seeing me do? What would I get pleasure out of? And it doesn't happen in one sitting. If you're X years old, then you've got all of those years of the mind control, all of the stuff that was pumped in, mixed in with what's now kind of the sediment floating in all the liquid BS that's been pumped into you. You've still got all of that stuff that was in you in the first place, and what the universe had intended your mission to be, your differentiation, your unique nature package. That part is still in there. It's just overwhelmed by all the outside stuff that's been pumped in. So stripping away and identifying those little grains of wonderfulness that are in you, that things that you've done in the past that you feel best about, that you feel good about, that you did, those are great clues for the real you, who you are. It's the things that you did where you were good at it. You just seemed like naturally good at this thing, and you loved doing it. It wasn't a pain to do it. It was fun to do it. Now, how can I get money for that? I have to feed myself and my family. So how can I do what I really want to do and was designed to do by the universe and still cover the costs? So then you start to think of a plan. So this could take weeks, it could take months, it might even take years, but it's the way out of uh, an unproductive, unhappy life.
Yeah, I think it is the way out is to inquire and start to really, they always say like invest in yourself. It's the best investment you'll ever make, and that doesn't need to be money. That's time, right? Like that's investing time in yourself. And I think the big struggle is it's very uncomfortable for many people to be almost alone in their thoughts. So you said like, the 20 minutes a day and you sit and you'll write. And I know that I journal a lot now, but I didn't always. And I think about me when I was younger. I probably, you know, would do everything to keep myself busy. Like, I'd make sure I was out with my friends or seeing my family, busy with work, going to the gym. I would do everything to keep myself busy. And again, recognizing and looking back now, that's that resistance piece, right? Which is bringing us in a bit of a loop. It's the resistance that you feel and the discomfort you feel to being alone with your thoughts. So actually, but then remembering the metaphor that we've discussed today is being alone with your thoughts. If that is uncomfortable to you, can you remember that you're unlocking a new level? And the more you do that and are alone with your own thoughts, I'm almost, you said that it's the path out. And I feel like every time you spend time on yourself, investing in yourself, you're laying another brick or a tile or whatever it is in that path. And these little steps will add up and you will eventually, you'll pave your own path out of it. But it takes time and it takes discomfort, it takes effort, and you've got to have the desire as well. You've got to have the desire, even though it is uncomfortable.
Yeah. And as you say, the discomfort is a sign of you're going in the right direction if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, and I think about, building the business. Every single week, I am being held a torch, like on different parts of me, and it's yeah, but all these little steps they lead to big changes. And if you want to be able to look back at yourself, they always say, right? I mean, I think there's a saying somewhere. It's like if you're not embarrassed about who you were a year ago, you probably aren't growing, right? You probably you probably haven't grown, right? Because these little steps, you can see big changes. A coachee said to me this week, and it really stuck with me. And he went, "You overestimate the amount you can do in a week, but you underestimate the amount you can accomplish in a year." And that really stuck with me. And I think for listeners, that would be a really helpful thing to remember, because while you might feel you're not paving this path very quickly, if you take that steps, those 10-15 minutes every single day for you, when you look back in a year, you will be like in shock actually about how much you've grown.
And eventually, if it isn't fun from the very beginning, it becomes fun to have this alone space to review how your life is going because you start to get ideas. Ideas start to pop into your head. And that happens 24/7. It especially happens in the alone space, but the alone space triggers it, and then it'll pop up at odd moments. It started in the alone space, but it happens around the clock, and you get these ideas and you jot them down. and you use them, and you start to realize that you're inspired, and it seems to be like you're receiving help. It seems to be coming from the outside. It it may actually be part of yourself, but from the larger perspective, it's the same thing. It's the whole thing is just consciousness. So putting labels on it, whether it's coming from me or coming from the outside, but there's a feeling that it's being given to you, that there's somebody up there trying to help you, because the shock of these revelations is like, I didn't know that. I wasn't just thinking about that. I wasn't even trying to deduce something. It just popped into my head. So, um, I think this path that you're describing of redefining the resistance that you feel in yourself. I did that when I was forced to be on stage when I was young. I started with this feeling that I identified as fear. I didn't stage fright. This is stage fright. I can't go out there. I'm gonna be a fool. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna crack up. Um, and then I came to redefine it. And I said, well, maybe I'm just excited. Could it be excitement? And that got me on stage, and then I was okay. So redefine the resistance that you feel. What am I feeling inside? It feels like I'm just uncomfortable, and I don't want to be here. Well, maybe that's not what I'm really feeling. Let me feel, what is it really? Could it be that I don't understand as much as I want to understand about the situation? Well, maybe I should pay closer attention to what's going on around me. Um, so we do need to take that first step of doubting our own last thought or feeling. Like, as you said before, the culture has become, since COVID, and I think, it really started earlier than that. It started with when I had been a great proponent of the internet and wanted to help bring it on. And of course, my work did help bring it on. Uh, but then it turned on me. It wasn't coming out the way I thought it was going to come out. It came out as, gee, when you give everybody their own TV station, metaphorically, in other words, social media, most of what comes out is hate and putting other people down. And when somebody says something idealistic, bullying them and threatening them. So while we're in this modality of being critical of everything and everybody else and question your own last feeling that way. Question your feeling. If it's not a positive feeling, question it with all of the same energy you put into putting people down.
Yeah, because I mean, really, everything you see is, online, whatever. It's all projection, right? It's all projection, whether people want to believe that it is or not, right? It's, you know, if somebody's saying something and like, yeah, we're not all going to agree on everything, right? But at the same point, we talked about this difference between boldness and rudeness before. And I think that's a really important point for people to think about, right? In terms of if something is an opinion is making you feel uncomfortable or whatever, right? It's like there's a way to say things. That being said, you were talking about reframing, and I think what the reframe or what I'm taking even from today's conversation is the discomfort is means I'm up leveling. You talked about reframing nerves as excitement and stage fright as, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Bring it on, right? And I think the reframe here is that resistance is actually I'm leveling up. to kind of bring it round to, you talked about positivity and how it's almost like wearing a cape, and with that cape, you know, it's almost like you've got a glow around you. And I like to talk about that as like magnetism. I talk about it as in when you have, when you're paving your path, right? So going through all this resistance, every time you feel it, you're laying another tile down or another slate, but you're paving the path towards this kind of magnetic, positive glow. And when you are there, I mean, I'm not saying there's a destination and you stay there. You obviously keep moving, and you don't stay still. But when you have that magnetism, you can inspire so many people round about you to start paving their paths too. And I just think the more we can all do that, the better this world is going to be, right? And we do all have the power to do this, and it starts with the little steps. But if we pave these paths one step at a time, we will you will achieve that state of magnetism, which, and you can feel it, right? Like that feeling of magnetism. For anybody listening, if you're thinking, what the hell is she talking about, if you think about what you do just because you enjoy it, or what you do just have fun, or when you're having a laugh, actually when you're just enjoying yourself, and people can see that and feel that from you. It's one thing to say I'm enjoying myself, right? And it's another thing to be like, I'm enjoying myself, right? People feel it from you, and we might try and lie to ourselves, but people pick up on our energy. So much of our communication is nonverbal, right? So you can say you're happy, but if your energy is not that magnetic wave where it's agreeing with the words that are coming out of your mouth, people can sense that. They don't necessarily, it's not a conscious thing. They're not consciously saying, I don't believe you, but subconsciously that's happening. So if you can get to a place that like your words match your energy levels, you've achieved this, as you called it, the cape. For me, the magnetism, which you will then continue to inspire others.
I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah, no, I know. Here, I'm on my soapbox. Well, no, well, today's conversation was absolutely fantastic, Bill. So for listeners, I guess today we talked about resistance and what that feels like, what to do when you feel that, how to reframe it, and the path that you're paving. Bill, is there any key takeaways you want the listeners to leave with today?
Well, I would echo everything you just said. And going back to something you said earlier about animals, dogs, cats, um, they are open-minded to everything that happens. They're curious about everything that happens. They don't slap a negative label on things that are happening unless they're definitely threatening. But if they're not threatening, everything is interesting. And if we just become natural again and accept that whatever's happening is happening, and if some of it seems challenging, that's wonderful. How great. What fun. You can, if you don't feel confident, act confident, and that will eventually turn into real confidence. Remember to smile, because your body senses from the smile that you must be happy. And all of a sudden, all the pain goes away from your body, and other people start to look at you and they smile. That's all I would add.
Yeah, that's it. Smile, and you don't realize the power that you have to influence others, whether it be with your words, your actions, or your energy. So keep working on it, keep leaning into resistance, and keep paving your path. Um, Thank you so much, Bill, for another fabulous episode. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We will be back next month with episode 9.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Bye.